Okay, first things first, props to the voice actor of Ilya. The way the lines were delivered was truly spectacular. Probably one of the best moments of the episode, not counting my bias for some scenes. It was just a really good scene because of the voice acting, the way the lines were delivered and all that. It just added so much, realism to it because the certain ways you could interpret this scene. But I just wanted to point that out. Just, I would tip my hat to, the voice actor of Ilya for how good that scene was. So anyways, this episode, this is definitely going to be an episode for Bumblebee shippers. For anyone that ships Yang and Blake, this is definitely going to be an episode for you. Because there was a lot of tension in this episode. Now, granted, I know there's other ways to interpret it besides just shipping those two. You can just interpret it as friends. I understand that, but I am one that does, ship those two. I'm not going to lie. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. I'm not one of those that let that control me in any way. And I see why many would, think of those scenes like that. Because it was pretty obvious. Like, you can interpret it like that. Especially when you saw how Yang was reacting to how Blake left. Just her emotions. How she looked at the picture frame and looked at Blake in it. She got really upset. Just all these little scenes. I could see why many would be very hyped up. If you're like a Yang and Blake shipper, you would definitely be hyped up for those scenes. You'd be like, yo, is this actually happening? Like, is this confirmation? Especially after we get a scene with Ilya apparently confessing her love towards Blake. Now, that right there, that was something that, whoa, okay? So, actually, let me get into that, okay? Before I get into the, the Yang and Blake stuff, because that's my personal bias, and I know many might not care about that at all, but basically, the Yang and Blake stuff, besides just how good the lines were delivered, it made this scene very realistic because of the way the dialogue was done, or how the dialogue was. Ilya basically states to Blake that she used to look at Adam in a love-type way. For instance, Blake used to look at Adam and it looked like she loved Adam, which makes a lot of sense. But this would mean that there was a lot of things not clarified, and Blake obviously lied to Sun in some ways because of that exchange of dialogue between Ilya and Blake. But anyways, though, apparently Blake, she was in love with Adam at one point, and we don't really know how far this relationship went. We don't know if it was a one-sided love, if, Blake loved Adam, and it was one-sided, or if Adam loved Blake as well, and they were in a couple, a relationship or something. We don't really know. It's not explained at all. However, this does complicate a lot of things, especially when you look at someone like Ilya that basically states that, I wish you would have looked at me like that. For instance, this implies that Ilya wanted Blake to look at her in a love-type way. And that's whoa, because look at what she was trying to do in this episode, okay? She is willing to destroy her relationship with Blake and in Blake's family just because for the sake of the entire Faunus. This shows how strong her will and her passion to make sure the Faunus are in a proper place in the world. She's willing to throw something like that away, especially after she apparently is in love or was in love with Blake. That right there is whoa, that makes her character realistic to show how she's willing to go that far. That shows why she goes so far. She's willing to do something like that. So, just crazy stuff. I mean, that was truly shocking, but I do have to say, I congratulate, Rooster Teeth for having the cojones to be able to have a gay character. I will give props to Rooster Teeth. I mean, they're not someone that really cares about that stuff. I know they don't. But, I mean, I'm happy that they're willing to do something like that, because this does give confirmation that something like, Bumblebee shippers and stuff, that is, a potential possibility. So I'm just going to say, good stuff, Rooster Teeth. I do like your direction with that and how you handled that segment. Very good stuff. So anyways, let's talk about the exchange between Yang, RWBY, and Weiss. So that entire scene was very sweet in some ways, but also very depressing. And when I mean depressing, I mean very depressing, because you have this happy moment going on. These characters, they haven't really been together for a very long time. I mean, even Weiss herself states, I didn't think I would ever see you two again. That's what she said. She told RWBY and Yang, like, I never would have thought I would get to see you again, which makes a lot of sense, especially with how her family is and what all happened. It makes sense why she would think that. And she's like, I never thought I would get to see you again. Seeing you again makes me happy. And I mean, you just see these exchanges of how they all know each other. For instance, the way Weiss comes out and all that, and she hands coffee to each individual one, and then she hands it over to RWBY, and RWBY looks like, ew, she's getting all skittish and all that. And then Weiss is like, don't worry, I added an absurd amount of sugar and stuff and creamer to it, you're fine. It just shows that she knows how RWBY is, which is just a very sweet scene, just to see how they know each other. They're like sisters, so good stuff. But what really got me was once all that was said and done, once everything was like, you know, all the characters were communicating, she's like, you guys are my family. Like Weiss said, you're my family. Like, you're more family to me than my brother, my father, and all of that are to me. And that was like, that hits you right in the heart. You're like, man, she just admitted that how she feels about RWBY, Yang, and Blake, she cares about them to the point to where she cares more about them than her own family. That just says something right there of how much she loves them and what she will do for them. And I like the exchange once RWBY kind of left the picture and all that. And Weiss was talking to, you know, Yang, like, I know we haven't really had a lot of time to talk with each other. I know we're not, you know, that aware of each other, what we want, but I like how Weiss is just very direct about that, talking to Yang about it, but at the same time trying to communicate with Yang in a way to let her know that they're all there for her, regardless of what happens. And especially when, you know, Yang was like, you don't know how I feel. I lost everything. Do you know how it feels to have your mother just straight up, you know, walk off and leave you and all that? That's what she was saying. And then Weiss like, obviously I don't, but my family was, in a way, messed up too. It's a different type of loneliness, and I like that exchange. It was a very mature discussion between these two characters, because it's like what I always say in my other videos, like when someone's going through something, when a character walks up and says, like, I understand, I know what you're going through, but in reality they really don't. They don't know what you're going through, because they never been through what you're going through, and it's something that truly agitates me deep down when I see something like that in literature, where a character walks up to another character that's going through a lot of like problems, and they're like, I know how you feel, you're okay, and all that. That's a complete lie, because you don't know how they feel, you don't know what they're going through, you don't know how it is to be them. And so that always kind of made me angry. It triggered me a little bit, I'm not even gonna lie, okay? And so seeing how Rooster Teeth tackled that in a way that made a lot of sense, because obviously Weiss doesn't know how Yang is, or what she is feeling. She knows that Yang was lonely, the way she felt, but at the same time, though, she also experienced some shape or form of loneliness. It was a different form of loneliness, which made it to where they could both relate in a certain way, but at the same time, though, they were very different. And I like that exchange, showcasing that they both have their own things they have to come to terms with, but they are similar in some ways, and so they, at the very least, can understand what it means to be lonely. So, yeah. Good job, Rooster Teeth. Just props. Excellent, 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 excellent work to this episode. So, anyways, let's get into the Blake stuff and Yang stuff. So, besides the shipping and my bias to that, though, basically, you have to where Yang is really upset that Blake left, which makes a lot of sense, because we know that their entire, you know, relationship's very complicated, because remember, Yang lost her arm thanks to, you know, Adam and all of that, and it's just a very big issue there. It's a complicated mess, and so obviously these two's overall interactions with each other would be very awkward, and they would hold some feelings towards each other, or maybe anger or whatever, sadness. In this case, you know, one of each other might blame each other. For instance, Yang might blame, you know, Blake, and Blake might blame Yang or whatever. Just, it could be a back and forth thing, and because of that, their relationship is very complicated. It's not something that's just going to, you know, be fixed with a couple of words. And obviously, thanks to Blake running off, it makes it even worse, because Yang never really had the time to even process her feelings before Blake already ran off. I mean, she was still trying to come to terms with the lack of an arm before she even actually could come to terms with Blake already running off. So that obviously makes the relationship very complicated. It does explain why she is very upset, because Blake just ran off and didn't even say anything, and Yang is really upset about that, because, you know, she, you know, respected Blake. She liked Blake, and she always looked up to Blake and all that. Blake looked up to her. They were just, you know, friends. Good friends. And if someone did that to you, just ran off like that, you'd probably be very hurt and upset as well. So I could see why Yang acts like she does. She hasn't completely gotten over all of that. That is definitely something that needs to, you know, have time to work out, especially when Blake finally comes back. I feel like it's going to take a bit of a convo to definitely sort out their problems. So speaking of Blake, though, so Blake, in this episode, there is some progression going on, finally. Thankfully, there is some progression going on with, you know, Blake's family. So Blake's family is under attack and all of that, and they are about to get killed off. Now, will they die? I don't know. I really don't know. In all honesty, I would actually like it if they did. Now, don't get me wrong, I like the characters, I like the voice actors and all that, but I would really like it if they did die, and the reason for that is because it would add some really good motive for Blake to change, better herself, get to Mistral, get back with her group of friends and all that. It'd be a great way to motivate her to change and get things done. I just think it would be very good for her character, or at least one of the parents to die, either the mother or the father to die. It would add some great ways to motivate her to change herself for the better, even for the worst. Who knows? Maybe she'd go down a very bad path, but regardless, though, it would definitely add something to her character, more depth to her character, which would be very intriguing, and I would love to see how Rooster Teeth would actually handle that. But, anyways, Blake's progression overall with her side of the story, it's happening finally, and I'm glad. I'm really glad that's happening because I've been waiting for a while. Many of us have been waiting, and I'm glad it's not taking too much longer now until she probably finally gets off that island. So I want to end this video here, so let me know your thoughts in the comments below, how you felt about this week's RWBY episode. Did you enjoy it? Did you hate it? If you enjoy my content, please subscribe, and if you like this video, please leave a like. I love you guys. Please be safe. Chibi out.